Anyway, so let's start off with Project Ego, Heroes Fable. What the game is principally a role-playing game, but it's trying to do something with role-playing games that maybe have never been done before. I've always had a passion for role-playing games ever since I first started playing them back in the days of Wizardry, and I've always wanted to work on a role-playing game. So when the opportunity came to work with Simon and Dean, I worked with before on Dungeon Keeper, to create this game, then I leapt to the chance because I wanted to really approach role-playing games from a completely different angle. Now, I should start off by saying that everything you see here is really, really early. It's going to get at least 100% improvement graphically on what you see. The frame rate's not quite what it should be. The detail in the world's not quite what it should be. There's no lighting model in there. There's quite a few gameplay elements very key gameplay elements we can't show. But so when we get this demo, there'll be me talking all the time and waving arms, getting enthusiastic about bits, and Dean's going to be showing some stuff off.
Excellent.
So basically, let's start from the ground up. This is, you think of it as a classic role-playing game. The uniqueness really starts right at the very beginning in that you play one character, and that character at the start of the game is a 15-year-old kid, either a girl or a boy. And as the game progresses through, the character gets older, and by the end of the game, he'll be about sort of 70 or 80 years old. And he changes over time as he gets older. And the idea is to create a role-playing game, but to create a role-playing game based around a simulated world rather than a pre-canned or scripted world. And that will allow you to do anything you want. Also allow you to have a role-playing game where the character changes to reflect what you want it to be by what you're doing in the world, rather than you selecting, a fighter or a thief or an assassin or a magic user. You have to create them by doing things within the world. So, if we just talk a little bit about the character evolution. What Simon and Dean and his team have done at Big Blue Box is they've been inspired by some of the stuff in black and white. The idea of being able to play a character that's either good or evil or anything in between. Actually, the best home for that is a role-playing game. You can make the most backstabbing, evil assassin that is just unspeakably cruel in everything that he sees, or those most wonderful Lancelot-style knight that has an ethos that doesn't, by what you do in the world, rather than by any selections that you make. And how we change to reflect that in the character is quite interesting. We can show you a few things. I'll just touch on a few things now with the character. For a start, if you look at him now, he's about a 15-year-old kid. The sun's shining on his face. He's outside a lot, he's not sitting under the shade of a tree, then you'll notice his face will slowly get tanned. If you take his top off, his body will get tanned. Because he's growing and aging, if he's sun an awful lot, the quality will get worse and worse. You can just see now, Dean is speeding things up, you can just see him aging. He's now sort of in his 30s, now going into his 40s, now going into his 50s. If he spent a lot of time in the sun, then that's going to be even more weathered, even more craggy. So it means that every single person's character will be totally and utterly unique.
Wow. That's brain, the hair's brain too.
Yeah, it hasn't even begun what we can do with this character. Because you start him at 15, he doesn't have any facial hair. By the time he gets to 20, you'll notice he'll start developing stubble. If you leave that to grow, that can grow into a beard. You can go into a barber and have it shaved however you like. You have moustaches or beards. You can have dreadlocks on there. So we've got this character that morphs to reflect what you're doing with him, but also you can personalise yourself. And that's very, very important within the gameplay mechanics, because what your character looks like is how the world reacts to your character. So you can not only style his beard, you can style his hair. You have any hairstyle you like within the game. You can even have no hair. You can have dreadlocks. You can have Mohicans. Any style that you can get a barber to cut it in. You can tattoo your face. Totally and utterly make your character completely unique.
Wow.
Not only that, if we just pull out a little bit and look at his body, what we've got is a simulation of all the major muscle groups within the human body. So what we're able to do is to morph the character, reflect what you're doing with him. If he's doing a lot of exercise, if he's actually wielding a big sword or a big axe, then his muscles will start to develop, and he'll get more like Cohen the Barbarian. If you're sort of being much more stealthy with him, using a longbow, his muscles aren't going to be so developed, but he's going to be a lot more dexterous, a lot quicker, and that's a reflection of what you do with him. If you're using our magic system an awful lot, the magic system is based on willpower and it allows you to do incredibly cool things, then you'll notice that your character's hairline will start to recede. I don't know where we got this idea from, but clearly, it's clearly, Dean and I buy into that idea big time. Not only that, not only does his body change, but also you can change his clothes. Any person within the world that you see, you can wear their clothes, or attempt to wear their clothes if you can fit into them. You can go up to someone and just kill them just because you want those pair of trousers that he's wearing. You can be the sort of Conan Barbarian type character and wear a dress if you want to. I mean, I don't recommend it. People aren't going to take you seriously in the world, but being able to do anything with your character, but having it so that if he's in a fight and it gets the back of his hands cut, you'll see the cut open, and then the cut will heal, and that will be left as a scar. So your characters can be individual scarred. It's very important. And also, everybody in the world reacts to the way you look like. So if you look cool and you look mysterious and you look frightening, they'll react to you in a completely different way if you look like a knight in shining armour character. Which I think that's a really compulsive thing for a role-playing game. The other thing to realise is this is a simulation, so you can do anything you want within the world. But let me just tell you a little bit about some of the gameplay mechanics, which I think are really cool. You've got this character that looks like how you want him to look like. As the game starts, it starts off very simply. You're a kid in a family, your family gets killed, your pet dog unfortunately gets killed as well, which is the motivation for you starting to be a hero. And then as you do heroic deeds through the land, as you move from village and town, you'll notice that the kids in the town will start dressing like you. Your rumours of you being the hero is spreading through the land. They'll start cutting your hair like you. You're the equivalent of sort of a medieval pop star. People want to be like you. And after a while they'll start following you around, and waiting for you to do the next heroic deed. And so you'll be walking down a path and this huge dragon will leap out, and you haven't got a chance against the dragon, so you'll run away. And we've taken inspiration from a film. I don't know if you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Of course.
Do you remember the Brave Sir Robin sketch? Yes. You'll have the taverns within the game. If you've just done something not very heroic, or even something heroic, you walk past and you hear this song commenting on your character, saw a dragon and run away.
That's awesome.
If you go into pubs later in the game, you'll see your portrait on the wall, and that's how you know that you're a hero within the world.
We have drinks named after you?
Yeah, absolutely, the whole world, the objective of this game, the objective of this role-playing game, we've got, a story and a plot, and you've got your enemies and arch enemies which you're going to fight against, but it's more than a role-playing game because it's also competitive. There are other heroes in the world trying to do the things that you're doing. So introduce some element of competition within the game, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
The idea that one day, at the end of the game, you're going to be the greatest hero the world's ever known. A sort of Joan of Arc or a Lancelot or a Jesse James. That's the status that you're eventually going to have with it.
You get a lot of inspiration from things like Joseph Campbell's Man of 1,000 Faces, things like that?
No, I don't. I've never seen that. I do, where a lot of inspiration for the gameplay mechanics came from is the ethos of the Wild West. It's just always amazed me how gunslingers were just renowned. You know, they were gunslingers because they wanted to be the most famous gunslinger in the West. You know, that they could go walk into towns and they could live in towns. People were really scared about them, and I think that's, you know, a wonderful, marvelous mechanic, you know, in history to look at and be inspired by. Also, the other cool thing is, remember, your character is aging. What he can do when he's a 20-year-old is completely different to what he can do when he's a 60-year-old. So the gameplay subtly changes as the game goes on. There's a lot of cool stuff. You can do anything you like in the world. You can, for example, go and pick a flower and give a flower to a girl and chat up a girl and take her back and start a family. You can leave and you can have children and then go away and come back 30 years later and see your children grown up.
Wow.
You can go up to a little kid over there and you can cut him on the cheek, come back 30 years later and he'll have a scar and he'd remember you because you cut him on the cheek. You can even do ridiculous things in the world. If you particularly want to do this, you can run around totally naked. Quite what people are going to think of you when you're looking like that. You know, they're not going to be so impressed. So if you imagine everything that is in a role-playing game, but set in a simulated world where you can do anything, and this simulation is going on in the entirety of the world, not just in the people that you're talking to.
Wow.
So that's Project Ego. Very, very early at the moment. The look's going to get a lot better.
Still, it's incredible. It sounds incredible too.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, I think it's.
I think I'm more impressed with what I'm hearing about the gameplay.
Yeah, the gameplay mechanics I'm really happy with. I mean, we've got this really good, and I'm not talking about it because I think it's very cool. What happens when you know, because big problem is when the character dies in a battle, and what happens when that happens. So I think that's.
So you're not talking about that, huh?
Interesting. It's going to be that. Also, the willpower. This willpower magic stuff is very, very, very cool.
But you don't have to be a magic. You could be Mr. Fighter or Assassin.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, you can.
Yeah.